Welcome back to video number 4 of the bouncing ball series, and we left off with having just finished adjusting our translate Y, and then as you saw we had a few little issues with timing as we went through here, and particularly right here where the ball kind of sits and spins and then moves on. And that is because we just moved our keyframes on our translate Y but not along the translate Z. So we need to get these lined up again. And the way to do that is over here in your graph editor, hold the shift button and select both the translate Y and the translate Z. And you can see side by side that the first keyframe is good, the second keyframes are good, but this is where we started making the adjustments to get our timing right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select each individual one, and I'm just going to pull them in alignment with the keyframes that we pulled them away from. Make sure that you're moving the ones on the blue line and not on the green line. You can see that there's a point where the blue and the green will cross, and you got to make sure that you don't get lost and pull the wrong ones. And also trying to keep them at the same relative height, in the same position up and down, but not left and right. And this is so that we don't have too much movement and variation in the position of our object. Now with all of that done, let's go ahead and hit the play button and see what that looks like. It should have cleared up some of our issues with the rotation along here, and we've got a little bit of a double bounce there. I think that's probably going to be okay for now. Come back and fix that. I think really what I want to fix is right here. If you remember, I had adjusted the one of the links down on this side, trying to clean that up a little bit, but I think I'm going to go ahead and put that back where it was before, make it more of a straight line. So just remember, click on it, grab the handle, and just move it up slightly to smooth this curve back out. That might help a little bit. And then as we start to do the squash and stretch, we're also going to do some changing of positions in that process. So we're probably going to also make some more adjustments as we move along in that spot right there. Okay, now with that done, we're ready to go ahead and get things set up for our squash and stretch. And first we're going to go through and we're going to set our squash and at the bottom, and then we're going to put it back to round at the top. And we're going to move through and do that. And then, after we get our squash set up, we're going to go ahead and go back and get the stretch piece of it set up. And we might actually, I'm thinking about it, we'll probably do both at the same time. So we'll work on this and call this a pose-to-pose type animation in this case, because now we're going to create a behavior. The other thing we need to take a look at is when our ball hits, and because we're rotating it, it doesn't always hit in the direction where we can use our rescale, our scale tool. And as we can see, the axis is this direction on the ball, or this direction. And if I were to try to squish it or stretch it in this particular axis, it wouldn't look quite right. So what I need to do is I also need to adjust the rotation. And you can see over here, we're at -43. So I have auto key selected, and these things that I'm going to do are going to be picked up automatically now as we start to make our adjustments, with the exception of going in and doing changes like this. So I'm going to rotate it over to 90 degrees. So I'm going to type in -90 right there and just push it all the way over to its side so that we can get a good squish or squash on this one. And I'm going to pull it down. And I'm going to now reconnect the ball to the surface, and you can see right there the green line starts to touch the surface, and it gives me a nice good squish that direction. And when something deforms, it also resizes in another direction. We got to keep that in mind as well. So we're going to push it down, maybe give it a little bit more width this direction, and maybe make it grow just a little bit as well. Because the size of the object still stays, it's just the overall configuration or the shape of the object now pushes down and it goes out in the other two axes. And with that done, I'm going to go ahead and right click on my rotate X, and I'm going to key select it for that just to make sure it stays. And we can see that the scale button over here on scale, we've gotten narrower in the Z, but we've gotten bigger in both the X and the Y. So let's go ahead and see how that looks when we back out. And you notice that it stays squished all the way through until it gets back up to the top. It's not really the behavior we want it to have. And then if we go past that, it does the same thing, and then it starts to round back out as it gets up to the top. And this is where we really want to do kind of a stretch, where it's going to get longer. As it comes back out, it starts to bounce up. And we're going to have to change the direction or the angle at which the ball starts to do its little stretch. So the way to fix this piece here is just before it hits the ground, we want it to still be round. So at frame 24, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go back over here to scale, and we're going to just manually type in 1 in each one of these and put it back to its full size. And then we're also going to have to reposition it. And first what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select the keys and keyframe them, and then I'm going to go in and make sure, using my F key, I can focus and get the ball just before it hits the ground fully round. And by doing that, you can see also that the auto key also worked for our Translate Y. So now let's back out a little bit and see how this works. Ball comes down, and it looks like as it hits, it starts to squish. And now what we want to do is, as it starts to come off the ground, we want to help it along by moving it along its axis. So I'm going to rotate it. And actually, I'm going to leave it like this, and I am going to instead, I'm going to change the scale, because this direction that it's moving, kind of like the way that it points. Let me go ahead and put this back on object. I was messing around with it earlier. And what we want to do is, I want to pull this so that the object now starts to expand. Go back to my scale tool. Pull it up. And actually, might work easier first if it's already round, and then I can envision the direction I want to go a little bit better. So then I'm going to start to pull it up a little bit to give it some stretch. Don't forget, if it gets stretched, it also gets skinnier in the other directions. So it's going to get smaller in the X and Y, longer in the Z. I'm just estimating what it should look like. And then I don't want it to be embedded in the ground. I want it to be off the ground a little bit. So all of this is working. All of my, so it hits, starts to go back around right there, and as it goes up, it starts to return to being round shaped. See how this looks. Squish, pops up, rotates as it goes, and then it comes back around. It's round again, and as it starts to hit the ground over here, hit F on the keyboard to focus. Right here is where we're going to start the squish again. And this time I need it to, again, it looks like it wants to be either, it's closer to a rotation of straight up and down. So let's see what we can do here. If I hover over, you see that I get these arrows. If I hold my left mouse button, I can rotate it one way or the other. And I'm going to go greater, so I can get it straight up and down. So it looks like we're at 360 there, negative 360. And this is where I'm going to go ahead and set my squish, or squash rather. Call it squish, sorry. And again, we're going to pull it a little wider because we displaced space, we didn't lose size. And put it back down on the ground. It looks like all of our auto keys worked. So let's go ahead and again back up, see what that looks like. The ball's round up there, but it starts to squish before we hit the ground. So just before we hit the ground, right about 70, 71 actually, we're going to put all these back to 1. The right buttons. And I'm also going to have to pull it up out of the ground a little bit again. And our auto keys worked, so now let's see what we have. Ball moves forward, it hits the ground, and as it starts to lean over, it rotates back out again. And at this point, I'm going to have to lift it up a little bit because I'm going to give it a stretch. So I'm going to hit my R key again. I'm going to stretch it out. And I'm going to make it skinny. And I'm going to pull it up just a little bit so it's no longer on the ground. See how that looks, see if I give it enough distance. Okay. And as it gets to the top, it should have rounded out before it got there. So as it gets to the top, I'm going to go ahead and round it out. And I'm going to change these scales to 1. And that should be good. So I may have given it more stretch at that point than I did the first time. Yeah, I probably did. So right there, I'm going to go back and give it some more stretch. A little bit more up. Probably want to pay attention to the numbers here. I'm at 1 3/4. Crush it in a little bit. Get more of a distance. Make sure that this looks good. So 1.75 goes up, comes back down, goes up, and in this case I'm at 1.812. I'm going to change that to maybe 1.5, just to make it a little bit less. So it's less than this one because there's more impact power there, and less impact power here as it starts to go down, and then it's round there. Like it's supposed to get round, and then here at the impact point, F on my keyboard, focus in. I'm not even touching the ground here. That's okay. We're going to squish it first, but we're going to have to give ourselves the rotation we need. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the left with it this time. Get that rotation around where I need it as it starts to hit the ground and squish. Maybe like that. So around 719, it's probably 720. Negative 720. Now I'm going to hit R on my keyboard, squish it down a little bit. Don't forget we got to make it wider again because we displaced it. And rotate around so I see the ground. W on my keyboard, push it back down to the ground. Get a better view. It would probably be flatter as it hits the ground down here, but that's all right. Just go with this for right now. Make sure everything kept, so as I start to hit the ground, I can tell that I'm already a little bit off there. So as we start to get there, I'm going to have to pull it up just a little bit. I want to make sure I stay in the same plane. I don't want to just try to grab it here or here and pull it up because it'll push me out as well. So I'm going to go back into this view and onto my side view. And that way when I grab it, I can just stay in the same plane, hopefully. All right. Back to where I was just before we hit the ground, right? There. I'm going to raise this up just a little bit, so since I'm having trouble with the buttons down there, I'm just going to go ahead and type it in, maybe 789. No, that's not. Grab it, I guess. There we go. See how that looks. Okay, let's start to rotate here. All right. Starts to do what I want it to do. Now we rotate the other direction. And right here. Right away. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pull it up and remember it was one. So maybe 130, somewhere around there. I'm gonna pull it up a little bit. And I have to make it skinnier. On the sides a little bit. Get that feeling that it's kind of bouncing up again, stretching. Okay. And we're also going to have to make the ball round before it hits the ground here. Because it's round there. It needs to be, it's the ground right there, it needs to be round right here, still. Right about there is where it should start looking like it's stretching, squishing. Now it goes up. Spun around in position. So, all right, that's not right. That should not have happened like that. It should be. All right, my mistake there. I must have not scaled it in the right direction. There we go. It should be smaller than 1 on both sides. It should be stretched up. There we go. That looks better. So, boom, up, rotates around, turns back to the ball, and then right there, I might just leave it. See how that looks. Okay. That was fun. Let's go back to perspective. No, don't do it again. Hit the right button. There we go. Alright, so let's go ahead and rewind it and hit the play button. Let's see what we've got. Alright, so a little exaggerated. We can go in and we can start smoothing some of this out a little bit more with our graph editor. But we kind of got this ball bouncing around a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and hit stop, and I'm going to stop this video, and we'll talk a little bit more in the next video.